At a dusty mountain auction, a giant dog stood alone, mocked, unwanted, and too wild for anyone to claim. But when a mountain man raised his hand to adopt him, no one imagined that this choice would spark a bond and an unbelievable story that the whole town would remember forever. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. High in the shadow of snow-capped peaks lived a man known only as Caleb. His beard was silver, his hands calloused, and his eyes carried the weight of many winters. Life in the mountains demanded strength, and Caleb had it in abundance. He chopped his own wood, hunted his own meals, and fixed whatever broke with quiet determination. Yet behind the rugged exterior lay silence, days that stretched endlessly without a voice but his own. Nights by the fire crackled with warmth, but no laughter filled the cabin walls. He had chosen this life of solitude, but deep down, even, he couldn't deny the echo of loneliness. The mountains had taught him resilience, but they had also left him longing for something he didn't fully understand. Caleb thought his fate was sealed, a life of quiet survival. But fate had other plans, waiting for him in the most unexpected form. The town's auction was always a lively affair. Farmers traded livestock, neighbors bartered for tools, and children tugged at their parents' sleeves for a chance at a sweet treat from the vendors. Caleb rarely ventured into town, but that day, he found himself standing among the crowd, hands tucked into his worn leather vest. The auctioneer's voice rang out, fast and sharp, as chickens, goats, and even an old wagon went to the highest bidder. But then the mood shifted. A hush fell as two men struggled to lead out a massive dog, his thick fur catching the sunlight like fire. He growled low, straining at the rope, eyes fierce and untamed. The crowd murmured with unease. "Too wild," someone whispered. "Useless," muttered another. Laughter rippled as the auctioneer shouted for bids, but none came. The dog stood alone, unwanted, labeled a problem too big to handle. Yet, as Caleb's eyes narrowed on the animal, he felt something no one else seemed to notice: strength, pride, and a hidden story waiting to be told. The auctioneer's voice cracked with frustration. $5. Who'll give me 5? A dog this size could guard a ranch. For years. Still, no hands went up. The giant dog stood panting, rope taut around his neck, his gaze sweeping the crowd like a challenge. Children clung to their parents, while ranchers shook their heads, unwilling to risk the trouble. Just when it seemed the animal would be dragged back unsold, a deep voice broke the silence. "I'll take him." Heads turned. Caleb had stepped forward, his weathered hand raised with quiet certainty. The crowd gasped, murmuring in disbelief. Some chuckled, betting the mountain man wouldn't last a week with the beast. But Caleb didn't flinch. As he walked toward the dog, their eyes met for the first time. The shepherd mix stiffened, then stilled, as if recognizing something familiar in the stranger's gaze. In that instant, the auction was over. Caleb hadn't just bought a dog. He'd found the companion destiny had set aside for him. Bringing the dog home was nothing like Caleb had imagined. The moment they stepped off the wagon, the giant beast bolted from his rope and circled the cabin. With wild, restless energy, he growled at the shadows, snapped at the wind, and refused to come near the fire. Caleb gave him space, watching quietly from the porch. He set out food and water, but the dog wouldn't touch either until the man disappeared inside. At night, the howls echoed through the valley, sharp and mournful, as though the animal was calling for a home he had long lost. Neighbors shook their heads when word spread. "That dog will turn on him," one said. "Mark my words, he won't last the winter," another added. Caleb ignored them, though doubt sometimes crept into his own mind. Yet, every so often, when Caleb caught the dog staring at him from the tree line, there was something in his eyes, not hatred, not fear, but a flicker of trust, fragile and waiting to grow. One night, a storm swept down from the peaks, rattling the cabin with howling winds. Caleb stirred at the sound of something outside, low, guttural, and close. Grabbing his rifle, he stepped onto the porch and froze. A massive black bear lumbered near the goat pen, its eyes glinting in the storm's fury. Before Caleb could aim, a blur shot past him. The giant dog charged, his roar shaking the night. He hurled himself between the bear and the cabin, teeth bared, fur bristling, every muscle alive with courage. The bear reared back, startled by the ferocity, and after a tense standoff, finally retreated into the darkness. Caleb lowered his rifle, stunned. The dog, panting and battered, turned to him, their eyes locked in silence. Then, for the first time, the animal padded forward and pressed his head against Caleb's leg. It wasn't just protection, it was trust. That night, in the heart of the storm, the bond between man and dog was sealed forever. By morning, the storm had cleared, but the story of the night spread faster than the clouds drifting over the valley. Caleb's neighbor, who had heard the bear's roar echo through the canyon, told it in town, how the mountain man's wild dog had stood fearless against the beast. At first, people scoffed. That dog? The same one sold at auction for pennies. But when more neighbors confirmed the tale, disbelief turned into admiration. Soon, whenever Caleb brought the dog into town for supplies, conversations stopped. Children pointed wide-eyed, whispering, "That's him, the giant dog that chased off a bear." Where once the pair had been mocked, now they were met with nods of respect. The animal once labeled too dangerous, too wild, was becoming a local legend. And Caleb, who had long lived as a solitary figure in the mountains, found himself part of something unexpected. He and the dog were no longer outcasts. They were symbols of courage,